Rapid cuts of exploding spaceships, alien creatures roaring, desperate humans fighting back against overwhelming odds, ending on a close-up of a determined human face amidst chaos. Did you just see that? What if the galaxy's most powerful force was utterly crushed until humanity showed up? Hey everyone, welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. Ever wondered what happens when the underdogs become the only hope? What secrets lie buried in the ruins of galactic empires? What kind of love and war can bloom in the face of utter annihilation? If these questions ignite your curiosity, then smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for a journey into the most epic sci-fi tales the galaxy has to offer. What's the most shocking thing you've ever imagined humanity capable of? Let us know in the comments using the code word FIRSTCONTACT so we know you're ready for the deep dive. Let's get started! The remnants of the Galactic Alliance fleet drifted in the inky blackness, less a collection of warships and more a scattering of metallic corpses, each a brutal scar etched across the void. Once gleaming behemoths of interstellar power, they were now broken husks, their internal fires extinguished, leaving only the cold, hard evidence of utter annihilation. Escape pods, once symbols of a desperate hope, tumbled silently, their emergency lights long dead, mirroring the extinguished lives within. No distress signals pierced the silence, no distant echoes of rescue fleets, only the crushing weight of cosmic indifference. The Alliance, a tapestry woven from 1,000 different species and millennia of fragile peace, had been brutally unraveled. For eons, this delicate coalition had stretched its tendrils across the galaxy, a bulwark against the inherent chaos of the cosmos. They had fostered trade routes that spanned light years, raised gleaming metropolises on worlds bathed in alien suns, and, with varying degrees of success, had attempted to quell the petty squabbles that inevitably arose between sentient beings with too much time and too many opinions. Peace, a concept so often sung and so rarely achieved, had, for a time, reigned. Then came the scourge. Not with diplomatic overtures or booming declarations of war, but with the silent, efficient hunger of locusts descending upon a field of ripe grain. They offered no parley, brokered no deals, and certainly entertained no notion of surrender. Their sole purpose was the reduction of all that was to ash. Planet after planet succumbed to their relentless advance, each world's vibrant ecosystems choked by the gray dust of destruction. Fleets that had stood as the pinnacle of galactic military might were reduced to glittering debris fields in mere days. Not even the most heavily fortified worlds could withstand their onslaught. Whispers among the terrified survivors painted them as demons from the void, or perhaps emotionless automatons driven by an inscrutable, destructive programming. The truth, however, remained shrouded in the same impenetrable darkness that clung to their silent ships. Their weapons, utilizing technologies the Alliance could only theorize about, sliced through energy shields as if they were mere holograms. Their vessels moved with an unnerving fluidity, ghosting through space as if defying the very laws of physics. Worst of all, they left no witnesses, no broken soldiers to recount the horrors, no grieving families to fuel the fires of vengeance. Now, the Alliance was nothing more than a fading memory, a ghost of a galactic dream. Scattered across the star systems, like embers refusing to be extinguished, were the remnants. Refugees haunted by the ghosts of their lost worlds, broken soldiers whose eyes held the vacant stare of those who had seen too much, scientists clutching data that might as well have been written in a dead language. They clung to the shadows of forgotten systems, their ships powered down, their very existence a desperate plea to remain unnoticed by the relentless tide of the scourge. Within the cold, unyielding embrace of a deep asteroid mining station, buried within the silent tomb of a dead solar system, one such group huddled, their hope a flickering candle in a hurricane. Until the silence was broken. A soft, hesitant beep echoed through the cramped confines of the control room. Commander Creel, a reptilian female whose scales now bore the dull sheen of exhaustion rather than their usual vibrant hues, fixed her gaze on the archaic console. "Is that real?" Her voice, raspy from disuse and fear, betrayed a fragile tendril of disbelief. Her engineer, a small, insectoid being whose antennae twitched with a nervous energy that belied his exhaustion, offered a slow, almost reluctant nod. "Yes, Commander. It's an old signal. Very old. It's been repeating for years, perhaps centuries. Its origin. He paused, his multifaceted eyes scanning the flickering data on the screen as if the answer itself might bite him. A small, blue planet in a forgotten system. Records, they call it. He hesitated again, the name catching in his throat like a shard of ice. Earth. A profound silence descended upon the cramped control room, heavier than the vacuum outside. A choked whisper finally broke the stillness. That can't be. Another voice, thick with disbelief, added, they were wiped out long ago. I thought they destroyed themselves. A third, his tone laced with the incredulity of someone confronting a long-disproven myth, murmured, I thought they were just a story. Commander Creel, however, felt a strange stirring within her ancient reptilian mind, a flicker of something akin to recognition. No, she said, her voice gaining a newfound strength. I've heard of them. Before the Alliance, before even the oldest recorded histories, there were whispers, legends of a race that waged war unlike any other. Her gaze intensified, her reptilian pupils narrowing. They killed each other over dust, over words. But when they stood together, nothing could stop them. She stared at the faint, flickering signal on the screen. Weak, broken, ancient, yet undeniably there, stubbornly alive. What do we do? The engineer asked, his voice barely a breath. Creel remained silent for a long moment, the weight of their impossible situation pressing down on them. Finally, she turned to the others, a grim determination hardening her features. The Scourge will find us here, sooner or later. We have no allies left. No weapons strong enough. No hope. She pointed a scaled finger towards the screen. Except, perhaps, a murmur of dissent rippled through the small group. They're extinct. What if it's a trap? What if they're worse than the Scourge? Creel listened to their desperate objections, her gaze unwavering. Then, she uttered a sentence that silenced them all, a statement born not of hope, but of a desperate, almost cynical logic. If the stories are true, the humans were the only race even the old empires feared. Maybe they died. But maybe they didn't. And maybe, just maybe, they're the monsters we need. A day later, on the bridge of the Silent Dagger, a small, battered vessel that had witnessed too much loss, the ship moved cautiously through the star-dusted darkness. Its running lights were dimmed to near invisibility, its engines running cold, a ghost ship sailing towards a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Its destination, a small, unremarkable yellow star and the pale blue dot orbiting it, a world known only as Earth. Inside the cramped confines of the bridge, the alien crew watched crackling, faded files, fragmented videos, distorted images of humans. They saw beings of all shapes and sizes, captured in moments of intense emotion, shouting in anger, weeping in sorrow, laughing with a ferocity that seemed almost alien. They witnessed the crude yet terrifying machines of human conflict, bombs that blossomed into mushroom clouds, lumbering tanks spitting fire, sleet fighters tearing through the sky. They saw cities that scraped the heavens and others reduced to smoldering ruins. And they watched, with a mixture of bewilderment and dawning comprehension, the strange, self-destructive tendency of humans to turn their weapons upon themselves, again and again. One alien officer, his multifaceted eyes wide with confusion, shook his head. Why would a species destroy its own kind so often? Another, his voice barely a whisper, offered a chillingly logical explanation, perhaps because they were training for something worse. As the pale blue marble of Earth grew larger on the main view screen, a palpable tension filled the bridge. The planet below looked serene, untouched by the galactic conflict that had consumed countless worlds. No plumes of smoke marred its azure skies, no fiery scars marked its green continents, no frantic distress signals pierced the void. It was peaceful. Is that truly Earth? Someone asked, their voice hushed with disbelief. Creel nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the tranquil world. Yes. That is the signal's origin. Suddenly, the ship's internal lights flickered erratically. The hum of the engines died, leaving only a disconcerting silence. A strange voice, calm, measured, undeniably human, echoed through the comm system, cutting through the stunned silence. Unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted Terran space. Identify yourself or you will be fired upon. The alien crew froze, their blood running cold. "It's them," Creel whispered, a mixture of dread and a sliver of something akin to vindication in her voice. "Humans!" The silence within the silent dagger became heavier, pregnant with the unknown. That voice, calm, sharp, utterly devoid of fear, human. It had emanated from the planet below, from Earth, a world believed dead for centuries, a species thought extinct. But their voice was back, and it carried the chilling certainty of a predator who knows its territory. Unidentified vessel. The silent dagger, a vessel carrying the weight of a dying alliance's last hope, limped towards the blue marble that was once called Earth. Within its cramped bridge, the alien crew pored over fragmented data files, echoes of a species they had relegated to myth. Grainy videos flickered across the screens, showcasing the bewildering contradictions of humanity. They witnessed acts of breathtaking altruism juxtaposed with horrifying brutality, the capacity for profound love intertwined with an almost pathological need for conflict. They saw cities that pierced the clouds and others reduced to dust by weapons of their own design. The aliens watched, a silent, bewildered audience to the chaotic symphony of human history. One young officer, his antennae twitching with confusion, murmured, "They fought wars over invisible lines on a map?" An older, battle-scarred veteran simply grunted, "They were practicing." As Earth filled the main viewport, an unsettling tranquility emanated from the seemingly untouched world. No orbital bombardment scarred its surface, no plumes of smoke choked its atmosphere. It was a stark, accusatory contrast to the ravaged galaxies they had fled. Then, a voice cut through the bridge's tense silence, calm yet carrying an undercurrent of steel that sent shivers down alien spines. "Unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted Terran space. Identify yourself or you will be fired upon." The aliens froze, the casual threat more terrifying than any booming declaration of war. Commander Creel, her reptilian heart hammering against her ribs, identified their ship and their desperate plea for aid. The response was immediate, efficient, and utterly devoid of warmth. Docking codes transmitted, beacon lock initiated, any deviation deemed hostile. They were led not to a welcoming port, but to a behemoth lurking in the void, a stealth station that defied all known sensor technology, a silent testament to a human ingenuity born of conflict. Within its cavernous hangar, they were met by humans who moved with a quiet confidence that bordered on arrogance. Clad in unadorned dark uniforms, their faces were impassive masks, their eyes glacial. Commander Hale, a woman whose gaze held the weight of untold battles, addressed them with a curt demand, "Speak." Creel laid bare the galaxy's suffering, the relentless advance of the Scourge, the billions lost. Hale listened, her expression unchanging, then led them to a war room where holographic displays painted a grim picture of galactic collapse. Earth, a solitary green beacon amidst a sea of red and yellow, watched it all. "You were watching," a survivor exclaimed, aghast. "We were watching everything," Hale confirmed, her voice flat. "Waiting." The question hung heavy in the air, "Why?" Hale's answer was a cold, hard truth, "Because we weren't sure the galaxy was worth saving." She then displayed chillingly efficient footage of a Scourge warship vaporized by a single, elegant strike from a hidden orbital platform. "They test us," she explained, a hint of something akin to contempt in her voice. "They learn." The price of their potential salvation was a test. A single human squad would accompany them on a scouting mission, a brutal proving ground. The humans who boarded their ship were silent, lethal. Their leader, a man whose eyes held the distant look of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it unremarkable, offered a single, chilling instruction: "Stay out of our way." The mission was a descent into a hellscape. On a half-destroyed planet, the Scourge descended with their usual brutal efficiency. But the humans did not falter. They moved with a preternatural awareness, turning the alien battlefield into their hunting ground. What followed was a whirlwind of calculated violence, alien blood painting the scorched earth as the humans moved with a terrifying, almost artistic precision. In 9 brutal minutes, the Scourge were annihilated. The alien survivors watched, their fear giving way to a dawning, unsettling awe. You fought them like you knew them," one stammered. The human squad leader turned, his gaze devoid of emotion. "We did." Back on their ship, the analysis was chilling. The humans hadn't just fought, they had predicted, anticipated, exploited. They moved like they'd done this 1,000 times. The insectoid engineer clicked, his antennae trembling. The human squad leader entered the room, removing his helmet to reveal a face scarred by battles unseen. Next mission, he stated, his voice flat. Creel, her mind reeling, asked the obvious, rest? His reply was a curt, chilling promise, we'll rest when they're all dead. Across the light years, the Scourge commander watched the footage of this impossible battle. His guttural roars of disbelief echoed through the command hive. Replay it! Again! He fixated on the fluid, lethal movements of the humans, their almost casual disregard for their own safety. Who are these things? His advisors, quivering in his presence, offered fragmented data, humans, pre-alliance, believed extinct. The commander's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Not extinct anymore. Find their world. Study them. If they bleed, we will drown them in it. Back on the human station, Hale revealed their strategy. They had been watching, waiting to see if any corner of the galaxy possessed the will to survive. The test had been passed. The Scourge has weaknesses, she explained, her voice gaining a predatory edge. They are fast, but their supply lines are vulnerable. We lack the speed to exploit that, Creel admitted. Hale's lips curved into a cold smile. We don't exploit. We strike. Operation Ember was launched, a series of surgical attacks that ripped through the Scourge's infrastructure with terrifying efficiency. The humans moved like ghosts, their targets reduced to ash before reinforcements could even be scrambled. The galaxy began to whisper the name of a species they had long forgotten. Hope, fragile yet persistent, flickered in the darkness. And somewhere in the cold vacuum of space, as the silent dagger limped away from their first, terrifying glimpse of humanity unleashed, one alien survivor, staring out at the indifferent stars, couldn't help but think, well, at least things can't get any worse than facing a galaxy-devouring swarm. Right? Back on the cold, sterile bridge of the silent dagger, the holographic display of the recent battlefield shimmered, a stark testament to the brutal efficiency they had just witnessed. The insectoid engineer, his delicate limbs trembling slightly, ran another diagnostic, his multifaceted eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. Their tactics, illogical. They moved as if they anticipated the Scourge's every move, yet their formations were unorthodox. Almost reckless. Commander Creel watched the replay, her reptilian mind struggling to reconcile the seemingly chaotic violence with the undeniable outcome. It was a dance of death orchestrated with a chillingly precise understanding of the enemy's instincts. They didn't fight like soldiers, her second officer murmured, his voice hushed. They fought like a plague. The human squad leader, his face a roadmap of old scars, re-entered the bridge, the faint scent of ozone clinging to his armor. Analysis, he asked, his voice flat, devoid of any hint of triumph. Creel relayed their engineer's bewildered assessment. The human merely nodded, his gaze distant. They fight with instinct. We learn their instincts. He turned, his glacial eyes locking onto Creel's. You observed. What did you learn? Creel hesitated, the weight of her species' desperation pressing down on her. They showed no fear. No hesitation. Only purpose. The human's lips quirked in a grim, humorless smile. Fear is a luxury we can't afford. Hesitation gets you killed. He paused, his gaze drifting towards the stars, perhaps seeing battles long past. Purpose, that's all that matters when everything else is gone. Across the gulf of space, in the pulsating heart of the Scourge command hive, the unseen leader raged. The reports from the scout teams were fragmented, contradictory, yet undeniably alarming. These humans were an anomaly, a species that defied their understanding of warfare. Their tactics were unpredictable, their resilience unnerving. They fight like cornered beasts, one of his generals hissed, his chitinous armor clicking nervously. But with the cunning of something far more dangerous. The commander slammed a clawed fist onto the obsidian table, the impact sending tremors through the chamber. Enough! Deploy the assimilation units. Capture one. We will dissect its mind, understand its weaknesses. A chilling order echoed through the hive. The Scourge would attempt to dissect the very essence of humanity's fighting spirit. Back on the human station, Commander Hale reviewed the mission logs, her expression unreadable. The alien survivors were proving useful. Their desperation made them compliant. Their knowledge of the Scourge, though ultimately insufficient, provided valuable data points. Their learning, one of her officers observed, watching the replays of the human squad's brutal efficiency. Hale nodded slowly. And so are we. Every battle, every engagement, it's a lesson. For them, and for us. A flicker of something akin to weariness crossed her face, quickly masked by her usual stoicism. War, it strips away the illusions. You see what a species truly is when its back is against the wall. Her gaze drifted towards the stars, perhaps remembering faces lost, sacrifices made in the long, brutal history of human conflict. And sometimes, what you see isn't pretty. The next mission was deeper into Scourge territory, a daring raid on a suspected supply depot. The human squad moved with their now familiar spectral grace, their dark figures blending seamlessly with the shadows of the ravaged landscape. The alien survivors, observing from a safer distance, watched with a detached fascination, like scientists studying a particularly lethal predator in its natural habitat. When the Scourge defenders materialized, their attack was swift and overwhelming. But the humans reacted with a speed and coordination that defied logic. Energy blades flashed, alien chitin cracked, and the air filled with the acrid smell of alien blood and burning plasma. The battle was a brutal ballet of death, over in a matter of minutes. As the dust settled, the human squad stood amidst the carnage, their weapons still smoking, their expressions utterly impassive. Later, aboard the Silent Dagger, the alien crew attempted to process what they had witnessed. They moved like they were reading the Scourge's minds, the engineer stammered. It was unnatural. Commander Creel, however, felt a chillingly logical explanation forming in her mind. No, she said slowly. It was experience. Generations of it. They didn't need to read minds. They understood the patterns of violence. She looked out at the cold, indifferent stars, a sense of profound unease settling within her. We sought monsters to fight monsters. Perhaps, we found something far more human. And as the Silent Dagger warped back towards the human-controlled systems, one junior officer, still slightly green around the gills from witnessing the visceral brutality of human combat, muttered to himself, I just hope they have good dental plans. All that, gnashing. Back on the deceptively sterile environment of the human space station, Commander Hale reviewed the after-action reports with a detached efficiency that spoke volumes of battles won and losses tallied. Each data point, each casualty report from the decimated alliance, was not just a statistic but a piece of a larger, brutal puzzle. The aliens, desperate for any sign of hope, watched her with a mixture of trepidation and burgeoning respect. They were beginning to understand that the humans weren't simply reacting to the Scourge, they were dissecting them, understanding their weaknesses with a cold, clinical precision. Their supply lines, Hale murmured to one of her officers, her gaze fixed on a holographic projection of Scourge-held space. Predictable. Almost ritualistic. A hint of disdain colored her tone, the contempt of a master strategist observing the clumsy maneuvers of an amateur. The launch of Operation Ember was less a series of attacks and more a carefully orchestrated vivisection of the Scourge's logistical network. Small, swift human vessels, eschewing the lumbering firepower of traditional warships, pierced through the darkness, striking with surgical accuracy at fuel depots, communication hubs, and cloning facilities. The Scourge, accustomed to overwhelming force, were caught off guard by this new form of warfare, a phantom menace that materialized from the void and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only smoking ruins and a growing sense of unease. The aliens aboard the Silent Dagger, now integrated into these lightning raids, could only watch in bewildered awe as the humans executed maneuvers that seemed to defy both logic and conventional military doctrine. They moved like shadows, one of Creel's crew whispered, his multifaceted eyes struggling to track the fleeting human ships. As if they know where the enemy will be, before they even get there. Word of these impossible victories spread like wildfire through the shattered remnants of the Alliance. Whispers of a long-lost species returning from the void, not as saviors but as something far more efficient. Hope, a dangerous yet persistent emotion, began to flicker in the darkest corners of the galaxy. On desolate moons and hidden asteroid bases, survivors dared to dream of a future beyond the Scourge's iron grip. Even pirate factions, those denizens of the galactic fringes who preyed on the weak, began to eye the humans with a newfound respect, a dawning realization that a new apex predator had entered the food chain. Meanwhile, the Scourge command structure was descending into chaos. Their predictable strategies were failing, their overwhelming numbers rendered irrelevant by the human surgical strikes. Fear, a weapon they had so effectively wielded, was now turning against them. Entire legions refused to deploy, their chitinous carapaces trembling at the mere rumors of human retaliation. The unseen commander, his rage echoing through the command hive, demanded answers, demanded a counter-strategy. But against an enemy that fought with the cold, calculating logic of a machine and the unpredictable ferocity of a cornered animal, their traditional methods were proving useless. Humanity, however, was not content with simply chipping away at the edges of the Scourge Empire. They wanted to deliver a message, a brutal, unforgettable lesson. From hidden shipyards nestled near the event horizons of black holes, the Ghost Fleet materialized, cruisers built from light-absorbing materials, rendering them virtually invisible to all known forms of detection. Their target, the Scourge capital system. As the Ghost Fleet silently slipped into orbit around the Scourge homeworld, a chillingly simple plan was put into action. Seismic payloads, designed to exploit the planet's tectonic vulnerabilities, were dropped into the crust. No alarms blared, no defenses were raised. The Scourge, complacent in their perceived invincibility, remained oblivious until it was too late. Then, from the silent fleet above, a single human transmission broadcast across every Scourge communication channel, a final, chillingly understated message: "You called us animals. You called us extinct. You forgot what survivors are made of." And then, the planet cracked. The Scourge capital, the heart of their brutal empire, fractured and died in less than 10 terrifying minutes. The loss of their homeworld shattered the Scourge's morale. Their fleets splintered, their carefully constructed hierarchy collapsed. Some attempted to regroup, clinging to the vestiges of their former power. Most simply fled, scattering into the darkness, hunted by a relentless, unseen enemy. The humans, it turned out, had been meticulous in their observations. Every Scourge outpost, every supply line, every strategic weakness had been mapped, cataloged, and was now being systematically dismantled. The galaxy was not being liberated through diplomatic negotiations or peace treaties. It was being cleansed by fear, a fear the Scourge had sown for centuries, now turned back upon them tenfold. Aboard the Silent Dagger, Commander Creel watched the holographic displays of collapsing Scourge territories, a grim satisfaction warring with a profound sense of unease. The humans were effective, undeniably so. But their methods, they were devoid of any sentiment, any hint of mercy. It was a calculated, almost clinical annihilation. "They fight like a force of nature," she murmured, a shiver tracing down her spine. One of her crew, a young pilot who had witnessed the destruction of the Scourge homeworld firsthand, offered a bleakly humorous observation. "Yeah. Like a hurricane that only targets the bad neighborhoods. Mostly." And as the Silent Dagger joined a human fleet charting the newly liberated territories, the insectoid engineer, still processing the sheer scale of the Scourge's downfall, muttered to himself, "I just hope their galactic city planning is better than their pest control." Because damn, that was thorough. In the wake of the Scourge's spectacular implosion, both literally and figuratively, the galaxy held its breath. The oppressive silence that had followed the Alliance's fall was replaced by a nervous hum of anticipation, a fragile hope flickering in the darkness. Species that had cowered in the shadows for generations began to emerge, blinking in the unfamiliar light of freedom. On worlds scarred by Scourge occupation, the first tentative steps towards rebuilding were being taken, fueled by a mixture of grief for the lost and a cautious optimism for the future. Humanity, however, remained an enigma. They had not swept in as conquering heroes, draped in the self-righteous banners of liberation. Instead, they moved with a quiet, almost clinical efficiency, mapping former Scourge territories, identifying potential threats, and offering aid with a pragmatism that bordered on the unsettling. There were no grand pronouncements of a new galactic order, no demands for tribute or subservience. Their focus was singular, ensuring the Scourge could never rise again. Aboard the Silent Dagger, now operating as part of a human-led reconnaissance fleet, Commander Creel observed this new reality with a detached fascination. The humans she encountered were a study in contrasts. They possessed a capacity for brutal violence that had decimated the Scourge, yet they also exhibited a quiet dedication to helping those they had saved. She saw engineers working tirelessly to restore ravaged infrastructure, medics tending to the wounded with a stoic compassion, and strategists meticulously analyzing every scrap of Scourge data to prevent future incursions. It was as if they had compartmentalized their very being, the warrior and the builder existing in the same human frame, each operating with cold, unwavering focus when required. One evening, as the Silent Dagger orbited a newly liberated world, Creel found herself in conversation with Commander Hale. The human commander stood silently, gazing out at the burgeoning lights of a recovering city. They revere you, Creel observed, gesturing towards the grateful transmissions flooding their comms. Hale remained impassive. They revere the absence of the Scourge. We were merely the instrument. There was a weariness in her voice, a hint of the cost of their victory. War, it leaves scars that aren't always visible. We carry them, just like they do. Her gaze drifted towards the stars, perhaps recalling battles fought, comrades lost in the long, bloody history of human survival. We fight so that others don't have to. That's the only reward we need. The galaxy, however, was not content to simply accept humanity's quiet guardianship. Across countless star systems, species that had once fled in terror now sought alliances, offering resources, technology, anything to stand alongside the force that had broken the unbreakable. Even the most isolationist civilizations began to cautiously extend feelers, recognizing the shift in galactic power. The tide had turned, and everyone wanted to be on the winning side, or at least, the side that had the terrifying capacity to ensure their continued existence. But humanity remained wary. They established no central galactic government, no grand alliance under their banner. Instead, they fostered independence, providing resources and training but insisting on self-determination. Their message was clear: the galaxy had to learn to protect itself. They would stand as a shield, a silent deterrent, but they would not rule. The scars of their own history, the endless cycles of conflict that had plagued their homeworld for millennia, had taught them the futility of empire. As the galaxy slowly began to heal, the ghosts of the Scourge still lingered. Isolated pockets of resistance remained, clinging to their hatred and their lost dominance. Human-led fleets hunted them relentlessly, not out of vengeance, but out of a grim necessity. The lesson had to be absolute: the age of the Scourge was over. Aboard the Silent Dagger, the insectoid engineer, while calibrating a newly acquired piece of alien technology, accidentally intercepted a human historical broadcast. It was a grainy recording of a human comedian, standing on a brightly lit stage, telling jokes to a roaring crowd. The humor was strange, often self-deprecating and filled with bizarre cultural references. He frowned, utterly perplexed. They find this amusing after everything? Commander Creel, observing his confusion, offered a rare smile. Perhaps it is their way of processing the absurdities of existence. After facing the Scourge, maybe a sentient banana peel slipping on a puddle is a welcome distraction. And as the Silent Dagger continued its patrol, charting the uneasy peace of a galaxy forever changed, the young alien pilot, remembering the sheer terror of facing the Scourge and the almost casual brutality of their human saviors, couldn't help but think, I just hope their therapists are paid really well. Because they've definitely got their work cut out for them. The galaxy, scarred but breathing, began the arduous process of rebuilding. The void left by the Scourge was not easily filled, a chilling reminder of the fragility of civilization in the face of absolute annihilation. Across countless worlds, the echoes of their brutal reign lingered, in the skeletal remains of once proud cities, in the haunted eyes of survivors, in the silent monuments erected to the fallen. The Galactic Alliance was gone, its ideals of unity shattered by a force that understood only destruction. Humanity, the unexpected saviors, remained an enigma. They offered aid, shared their hard-won knowledge, and helped establish new, independent governments. But they did so with a detached efficiency, a pragmatic approach that sometimes felt cold. There were no grand celebrations of victory, no triumphal parades across liberated worlds. Their focus remained fixed on ensuring the Scourge's demise was absolute and irreversible. They patrolled the former Scourge territories with relentless vigilance, hunting down the last vestiges of their once mighty fleets, ensuring no embers of their tyranny could reignite. Commander Hale, the stoic architect of their strategy, now faced a different kind of war, the war of peace. Her officers debated the future, the potential power vacuum, the delicate balance of rebuilding a shattered galaxy. Should they step into the void, establish a new human-led order? Should they attempt to resurrect the old alliance, a ghost of a dream? Hale listened, her gaze distant, perhaps recalling the countless sacrifices made, the brutal calculus of survival that had brought them to this point. Her decision, when it came, was characteristically pragmatic. We don't rule. We don't conquer. We ensure this never happens again. The directive was clear: aid, train, but do not control. The galaxy had to learn to stand on its own, forever bearing the memory of who had given them that second chance. Commander Creel, now a liaison between the fledgling galactic communities and humanity, stood on a balcony overlooking her homeworld. The skies, once filled with the dread of Scourge ships, were now clear, the stars a silent testament to a hard-won peace. She wore human-made armor, a symbol of a trust forged in the crucible of war. Her brother, his scales still bearing the faint scars of Scourge occupation, regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "They let you stay?" he asked, his voice still tinged with disbelief. "No," she replied, her gaze fixed on the distant stars where human ships patrolled. "They asked me to." "You trust them?" he pressed. Creel looked towards the silent, watchful sentinels in the sky. "I trust what they've become," she whispered. "I trust they won't allow another Scourge." The final message from humanity echoed across every star system, not a declaration of dominance, but a quiet, resolute promise. It showed images of worlds ravaged by the Scourge, juxtaposed with the tireless efforts of human engineers rebuilding them. It showed children, once facing a bleak future, now laughing under alien suns. It showed new governments forming, fragile yet determined. And it ended with a simple, understated voice: "We are humanity. We don't start wars. But if you bring them to our door, we will finish them." The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear of the Scourge. It was being rebuilt by the survivors, by the fighters, by those who remembered the terrible cost of silence. Earth did not raise a flag over the stars. It raised a warning. And in every dark corner of the galaxy, one truth was known: the Scourge was broken because humanity stood up. The galaxy would never forget. And as the last Scourge stronghold fell silent, a collective sigh of relief swept across the liberated worlds. On the bridge of a human patrol cruiser, a young ensign, gazing at a particularly desolate patch of former Scourge territory, couldn't help but remark to his grizzled captain, "You know, for a species that almost wiped itself out fighting over, well, everything, they turned out to be surprisingly good at galactic pest control." The captain, a veteran of countless brutal engagements, just stared out at the stars, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Yeah," he finally said, his voice low and gravelly. "Turns out, all that infighting was just really aggressive quality control." "So, what do you think? Did humanity's arrival change the galaxy for the better, or did they just become a new kind of monster? What other incredible stories of love and war await us in the vast expanse of the cosmos? Let me know your theories and reactions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the ride, and subscribe to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Stories so you don't miss our next thrilling exploration into the human spirit facing the unknown. What new threats and unexpected alliances await in the next chapter? Stay tuned to find out.